really pretty informal, and that's by design because we want it to be a conversation. So we're going to start with just a little bit of a summary of where we are and how we got here, some introductions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the design team to talk on the next steps. And really the goal of tonight is that we're all here to listen and hear what the community wants to say to us as we're in this really early piece of designing a new middle school. So, history of how we got here, 2017, a facility study was completed of these two schools to help inform the Concord School Committee of the viability of these buildings in the long term and start to inform cost for renovation, maintenance, start to look at the option of what a new building might cost versus trying to retro fit and renovate one of the two schools. It was never about renovating both schools. It's always been a one building vision from day one, thank goodness. And from that study led into conversations of filing with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which we did twice. That's the subsidy program that the state offers. The data there, I think just this one data point is pretty telling of why we are where we are. They get about 70 to 80 applications a year and they fund 12 to 15. So that just odds aren't good, and they look at the needs of the other schools and do that comparatively every year. And just hearing stories today, we've been talking a lot because the design team's been here all day, and there are districts with 100-year-old schools, which compared to what we're standing in and we're eager to replace, actually this starts to look pretty good. So that's the framework MSBA has to have. So when we got turned down a year ago, a little over a year ago, the Concord School Committee decided they would propose a warrant article. The warrant article we proposed was $1.5 million for the phase we are in right now. And I'm going to let them talk a little more specifically on what that is, but it's that precursor work of educational visioning, design, feasibility work here on the site, make sure we know what the site offers and what its limitations will be, so that we can get to a place where we have a schematic design of a school that starts to drive, frankly, the price tag, so that we know when we approach the community what kind of money we need to build the school we think that we want to build. And when I say we, I mean we. This is a town project, not just a school project, in hopes of asking the community to fund the project and go forward. So that's where we are. We're in the thick of that process right now. It's been an exciting bunch of months as we brought on first a project manager, which really helps to guide us through the process, take on some of the legwork, help us find design team, which is the folks you're going to meet tonight, and guide us through the next phases all the way up till that town meeting part and beyond if it's the wishes of the community. So I'm going to introduce Kristen Olson. No, first I'm going to ask the building committee to introduce themselves. A lot of them are here. A 17-member middle school building committee was formed by the board of the select board, and it's a wide cross range of community members, which I think has been a fantastic asset to the group. We started meeting last summer. We meet right now monthly at 7:30 in the morning at Ridley, so join us in person or live, or take, if that's not your time today, for lots of various reasons. We are recorded, tonight's being recorded too. We do want to be open and communicative. We also have a bunch of subcommittees that work under that structure. So I'll introduce the chairs and then I'll let the rest introduce themselves, if that makes sense, just so you can see who's here, and then I'll turn it over to Kristen. You want to start?
Hi, my name is Tim Holt. I'm one of the co-chairs of the committee, okay? I was also fortunate enough to serve on the high school building committee, okay, for that project, and I've lived in Concord for a relatively short period of time compared to many of you. I moved here 4 years ago from Carlisle, where I've been a selectman for 15 years, and I'm on the school committee there for 5 or 6 years, okay? So that's my background, but I'm one of the co-chairs of the committee.
Dawn, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we'll just have others stand around.
Hi, Dawn Borriello. I co-chair with Tim, and I have lived in Concord just over 2 years. I have a 5- and 6-year-old. My 6-year-old goes to Alcott, and my 5-year-old goes to CCC, Pat's school. So I'm thoroughly invested in the project. I design schools for a living, have been designing public schools in Massachusetts for over 20 years, so typically I'm on the other side of the table, so it's been a fun process to both bring on our OPM as well as our designers, and I think my experience, has, I think, been helpful. So it's kind of nice to be on this side of things. No, you have no idea. Over the weekend, I was like, do I have to run this meeting? Because I'm so used to running meetings. So it's nice to just sit. But thank you all for coming.
And then, Charlie, I'm going to start there, and then the rest of you can just take turns, if you don't mind.
Charlie Parker. I've been in Concord since '77, and I have 2 children who went through the schools, were up to high school age, and was on CSAC and am involved pretty deeply in the sustainability aspects of the school, although I'm also on the design committee. Very interesting process, great committee.
Hi, I'm Susan Bates. I'm the select board representative, and I've been in Concord for 35 years and have 2 sons that went K-12 in Concord Public Schools, and they're successfully launched. So, and it's a very interesting committee. I'm on the finance subcommittee.
I'm Pat Nelson. I am the director of Concord Children's Center, as Don nicely said, and part of the reason I wanted to be on this committee was because the children at the Children's Center will be affected by the decisions that are made around this middle school. I was on the Willard Building Committee, and it is a terrific committee, and I'm really enjoying this, and I'm glad to see so many of you here tonight.
Hi, I'm Heather Bout. I've been in Concord for about 12 years now. I'm one of the school committee representatives on this committee. I'm also chair of the Concord School Committee right now. I have really enjoyed this process so far. I have 3 kids in town, all in the schools here as well. Actually, the youngest of whom, if all goes according to our fastest plan, will have just graduated from the middle school when we open a new school. But I've been working on this since the beginning of the facilities study that Lori mentioned, so several years now. It's really exciting to see it get to this point. And to me, it's really exciting to have people in the room to help create the vision so that it really can be meaning our community's vision of a school, not just the vision of a few people. So thanks for being here.
Hello, my name is Court Booth, and I'm the second school committee rep with Heather on the school building committee. I put both of my kids through the Concord schools. They both have launched. Each day I say, still successful, as we do with our kids. And I was a community educator in the district for a good number of years, and left school service in 2015 and returned a couple of years later on the school committee.
And you're the chair of the design subcommittee.
That's correct.
Yes.
With Dawn holding my hand.
I'm going to go over here.
I'm Chris Popo. I've lived in town with my wife since '94. My children are now 21 and 24. And I served on the facilities committee, served on the design selection committee, served in a number of different things in town. And I can tell everybody who's new to this process, this group and this group of design professionals and project managers are really the best I've seen in many, many years. You should have great confidence in this process going forward.
Good evening, I'm Justin Cameron. I'm the middle school principal. That's all I have.
Follow that.
It's really hard to follow that. Hi, I'm Kate Hanley. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the town. Really excited to see so many folks here. I sit on the Sustainability Subcommittee, quite obviously, and also the Finance Subcommittee.
Did I miss anybody on? Great. And I know Cynthia's here from the Concord School Committee, Cynthia Rainey. So if I missed anybody else, wave your hand. So I'm going to turn over to Kristen Olson. She's from SMMA, our design firm. She's going to take care of the other professional introductions and then give you some updates on the next steps. And then we're going to open it up for discussion. Great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Olson. I'm an architect and project manager for SMMA. I'm joined by my colleagues Martine Dion, our Director of Sustainability, and Phil Poinelli, Educational Programmer, Visioning, architect. He wears a lot of hats, but he is our champion of educational programming. And then with us, we also have Andy Lowe and Julie Ledoux. Those are the owner's project managers. And with the school building committee and your school department, we form a team that's going to help get you all the information that you need, hopefully, to feel that what we're proposing in the end, developed through all of our teamwork, is something that Concord is excited about and is happy to support when it comes to voting for the project. So that being said, this is the first phase. As Lori mentioned, the 1.5 million warrant article really covers what's called the feasibility study and schematic design. So that's the very early stage of the project. There's detailed design after that, and then construction, of course. So during feasibility stage, the three primary components are site investigations and building investigations to really wrap our arms around what we're working with, so that we can propose a site-responsive building. It's educational programming and visioning, a lot of conversations with your teachers and academic leaders and talking to them about how they really want to use the school and what programs and spaces need to be available to give them the tools to deliver that amazing education that you have here in Concord. And the final component will be test fits and alternatives. So there will be, at the tail end of the feasibility study, our design team and architects and site, all of our professionals really are going to get together and propose some very different building concepts on the sites and gather feedback and do cost analysis and work with the school building committee and all of the stakeholders to present those options and narrow it down to one that seems like the best approach for schematic design. Once we're in schematic design, we do a little bit more tweaking, more detailed follow-through programming, and then at that point in time, detailed design is really just executing that schematic design vision. So schedule-wise, it's not a rapid process, but we actually are a little bit faster with this project than if you had gone the MSBA grant route, which is a great asset, a lot of flexibility. So the plan is to wrap up the feasibility study at the end of March and schematic design in July. Then throughout the summer, there will be some Q&A from the community, possibly some more engagement opportunities, and then in the fall is when the project will be proposed at your town meeting. So all of those dates are yet to be anchored, set in stone, but that's the overall project timeline. So again, this is the first of many community engagement sessions that will be forthcoming, and at this one, our goal is really to hear from you, be it questions or comments or whatever you have. We're here to listen, and I have some colleagues here who can help me answer questions as we go. So without further ado, I'd like to take the first question. Great.
I was hoping to see some kind of diagram. Can you say, like, maybe this isn't decided, is there a location, like a parcel of land that will hold a new building? Yes. I have a lot of things I want to say, but I wanted to know something about, like, what are we working with? What's the, first step? Like,
the plan is to use the Sanborn Schools site. Now, early studies had looked at whether it would be an addition renovation or a new construction project. A lot of times you might explore that feasibility, but through your earlier study, I think the school building committee already got some good information that proposed the new construction alternative, and then also looked at the size of the site and the projected size of the school. So the current plan is to build adjacent to the school so that operations at the school are not disrupted, students are not displaced, and then there'll be a transition over, and then demolition and site work to follow.
So similar to the high school project then, if you're familiar with that?
Yes. I'm not familiar.
Yes.
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 And then, just sorry, one more, like, kind of basic question. I'm a very visual person. The soccer fields, would those be available or used by a lot of kids and families in town, or is that where the construction might be?
Okay, we know that, the school uses it too, so we're gonna need to get a plan made as to what that option's gonna be. It's on the radar, nothing's been determined yet. We need a little more timing information too, to be sure we know which seasons are gonna be impacted, so it's definitively on the radar. The town is very aware and talking with us too, so that as those programs are in place, they'll know what's happening.
Thanks.
So I'll follow up on that. Visual aids would have been fabulous tonight, because my question is also about site. So building on that question, on the west side of the school, Muscle Meadows, there's a forest, and then there's the lower field, and then there's wetlands, the trail, the wetlands, there's other forests. Have you gotten far enough to understand how you're going to manage that piece of land, that forest between the two fields, and then how you're going to, the school new build will impact the forest on the border of the property?
You raise great points, and exactly why we don't have any diagrams that we're showing tonight, because our teams are out there surveying the land to get contours. We have a wetlands specialist out updating the flagging, and they'll pull those points to make sure we have the correct wetlands boundary, and also geotechnical work. So all of those investigations are happening right now, so that they can inform where we do our first test pits. And then in terms of how much land where is impacted, the feasibility study, we're really going to put it all on the table. So there may be options that get shed very easily because it's just not the best place, but we don't want to leave any stone unturned, so to speak.
Thank you.
As a landscape architect that works on a lot of campus projects, I know that site typically gets cut from budget pretty easily. And I think there's a lot of people in town that were pretty frustrated with the high school that the site facilities got majorly impacted, athletic facilities and otherwise. I think it's inevitable that the fields are going to become part of the site, and it would be really helpful if in this project, rebuilding those fields on the demo site here gets carried in the budget and not cut off as low-hanging fruit.
That's good. We definitely strive for the replacing everything as needed by the town, and not getting down the road where you have to be such a huge program element. So, but we'll keep that in mind. I'm sure the building committee has Yep.
My name is Michael McAteer, and I had the distinct pleasure of having served on the Alcott, which was a very long time ago. And Concord is on a journey, and our schools have become better and better from a sustainability standpoint, from an educational programming standpoint. And I think we are so excited about sort of the last one we can see for the time being to be a zero net energy school. And how fabulous is that? And my question is, it's more challenging, yes, but do you think that having a municipal light plant, which is an energy delivery company, to help as we begin to look at the features of a net zero school, which is to have the ability for a renewable energy system either on-site, en route, that will be driving the sustainability portion of it? Will you be working with the municipal, and are there things that we as citizens can help you with that?
And I'll definitely defer to Martine with her amazing expertise on that subject.
So as part of the feasibility study, we will do, with some of the preferred options, we'll do a early PV site and building a roof assessment to see how much PV the site is capable of holding between the building roof and the parking, for parking canopy if needed, so that we get to net zero. And I think as part of that, there has to be a conversation with the municipality because of, I think because of our understanding, there are goals for the town to for carbon reduction emission. And as part of those goals, I know that the municipal plant has their own goals to go with clean energy. So I think this project is will take part of those goals. There has to be a back and forth conversation to understand how the project and the municipal plant could collaborate on the PV. So definitely, we think there's going to be discussions then. And the preference would be to have something happening through feasibility, so we have a little bit of knowledge on how to proceed during schematic design in terms of interconnection, those types of things. I'm sorry, photovoltaic. So solar PV are solar PV panels that would go on the roof, and those produce electricity just directly harvesting from the sun. Thank you, Phil. We get caught in our,
So just to add to that, I'm in the same place you are. I spoke to Dave Wood yesterday, director of the Light Plan, and invited him to the next sustainability subcommittee meeting and asked that he stay present from here on forward. So they do need to be in the conversation early. I know about this much about solar, but I know that storage and capacity is stuff they got to figure out. So they do need to be in the room. So that's a commitment Dave's already offered to us, and that way we plan together from the beginning.
And that raises one other point that I do want to add, that to get to net zero and highly efficient, low energy buildings, integrated design early on with all of the team members is really essential, which is why we have Martine and these players, and in-house at SMMA we have mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So we're not just looking at architecture and site and then moving out to looking at our engineering partners. We really do that from day one to make sure that we have the best shot at that.
It's fully in parallel to the process, to the design process.
So I know you had a question for some time.
Yeah. My name is Jane Huber, and I live here in West Concord. I was just wondering about what are the challenges of the site. When I look at it, and I know in the early schematics they had sort of created a stair, a sort of it wasn't cantilever, but a sort of stair to work with the site. So in order to use the site effectively, a lot of it is on sharp, sort of steep hill and forested. And I'm wondering about, and I don't know to whom to direct the question, I'm wondering about wastewater, sort of water runoff and erosion. The hill, particularly behind this side of the school, is incredibly steep and washes up pretty regularly. And so when we talk about the loss of like site work, I think it'll be, the site work is going to be really critical to maintain it. In part because there are one of the town water areas is right behind here, and just close by, the right behind here, and my well is right behind the school, probably about 20 feet off the property line. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a comment and question I'm going to have to take back to the office since we don't have our site folks here tonight. But we are very aware of the wells in the area, the steepness, erosion, and we'll be working through that. Also looking at the alternatives, maybe that's a drawback to one of them that builds into the site, and it drives a higher location, so.
So just to follow up on the sustainability questions, what is the commitment to sustainability, and what will keep it from being compromised? In other words, I heard net zero mentioned. Is there a commitment to that? And does that mean that we would look at geothermal, we would do what it takes, or how much commitment is in place that you've heard
I
from the
think
town?
that's probably, we're going to have a few parts to that answer, but I know that first and foremost, I think that there is an interest in making this about your children in school and education. And so I know that that is a huge driver and what we're really going to be looking at the hardest, and why Phil is spending so much time with your educators. That being said, we have Martine and amazing resources in-house so that it doesn't have to be a trade-off. We don't see a reason why it's one or the other, or one would compromise the other. And so Martine can speak to the goals a little bit about what we understand so far.
So from the RFP, the mandate was for a net zero or net zero ready, depending if you can afford the PV part. And so the goal is to build a highly efficient, ultra low energy So alternative energy means the operation of the building, the electricity it's going to need to heat and cool and the lighting, etc. Is going to be very, very low. It's going to be very well insulated. That was a mandate from the RFP. So from the get-go, we're gonna have a goal for a low energy use intensity between 25 and 30 is what we're looking at, and that's in the sort of in the range of net zero ready. And one thing I want to bring everybody up to is the fact that this project is going to be permitted under the new the current to be fully mandated in the next weeks or next month, Massachusetts Energy Code, which really raised the bar from the previous, and this town is a stretch goal. So we even raised the bar beyond the Massachusetts base energy code. And I will tell you, between the code and that net zero ready, the gap is really narrowing. So the feasibility study is going to look at, obviously, is going to look at the affordability to get there, but our early understanding is that it's not a huge incremental cost. That's all going to be in the feasibility study. As part of that, to respond to your question about the geothermal and the type of systems, we will look at different systems. We will look with the facilities department. We want to make sure that this town will have a building that they can manage. That's not going to be too complicated. So we will be looking at different options. And that will be, again, included in the feasibility study. Beyond energy, as Kristen said, we are discussing number one, potential for passive house strategies, mostly as concept and strategies, and we're working with Stephen Associates. We partner with them, so we'll do an evaluation for passive house. Excuse me, I'm not contagious. I've had this for a month. So there's that component, and we're also looking for other areas, sort of a comprehensive approach to sustainability. So we'll look at indoor environmental quality, water efficiency, sustainable sites, sort of, lead-ish guideline, sustainability level.
So as part of the feasibility study, we're developing all those goals, we're testing it all, we're doing cost comparisons.
So there'll be an assessment in the feasibility study.
And will well building be a part of this?
Very good question. So well is mainly right now there's not a well for school, but we have in our office we have kind of started introducing well concepts in inspiring some of the design of the project. So yes, we will have again recommendations, early assessment of the well criteria for the feasibility.
Brown? I am going to switch gears a little bit. So I'm a member of our district's CPAC board, our Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And my question is actually about inclusion. So our town has, of course, this amazing sustainability goal, but also a goal that's related to the inclusion of all of our students. And I'm wondering if you're giving any thought to maybe working with an inclusion specialist to ensure that spaces for our students who have some sensory needs, and that's our students with autism, ADHD, even in dyslexia, there's a known sensory neural component. So we have a lot of students, a lot of disabilities where there's a really large sensory component. And I'm wondering, as you're just thinking about designing spaces to include all of our students, how you're thinking about ensuring that these spaces are not just ADA compliant, but also really meet the needs of our students.
And so Phil started some of those discussions, and so I'd like to see if you've gotten far enough along, otherwise we might need to.
Who started those discussions?
We've started discussions. We met from 7 this morning until 4 this afternoon, and we'll have another day of that on Friday, and very likely will spill over into a third day this month as well. We're talking with virtually the entire faculty. People are groups, specific groups are cycling in and talking about it. We talked a lot about it during our visioning session that we had last week. So we're very much part of this is universal design for learning, social emotional learning, diversity in many respects within the school, this is very much a focus. We've done a great many schools. I've been programming schools for quite a number of years, and you have a very engaged staff that is going over all kinds of details about how we do things and what's going to be needed for the new school. And a lot of the discussion, for example, is how are you achieving, what are the spaces that you need, but how does universal design for learning manifest itself within the design of those spaces? So very much at the top of our minds from an educational planning standpoint, and are addressing and will continue to address through the life of the school.
Thank you. Could I just ask a quick follow-up question to that? Is part of the, I'm not involved in that organization. Talia's a friend of mine. But I understand that one of the things that we're engaging in right now as a district is bringing more kids sort of back into the district, and my understanding is that will necessitate really a change in programming. Like, we're as a district needing to really learn new things and do things new ways. So the experience, my sense is the experience we already have as a staff, faculty, community, isn't all the way there in terms of what we're going to need even a year from now, let alone in 600 years when we build this thing, right? So my thought is, I think it sounds great what you're doing. I just wonder if there's, that inclusion specialist idea. Are we getting the perspectives of people who really understand what we're going to need in 5 years, and who are you going to talk to about that, really, is my question.
Yeah, I think it's a package, certainly, and Phil has a colleague who joins us too from Hewlin Cole, which is a partner to SMMA, and that's who met with us last week. And last week's focus was really the visioning, and I want to stress that word because I think so it takes the point you're making and the projecting out of what do we want the schools. I say schools because I'm bringing them all in along this, but what does the middle school want to be? And it's a combination of bringing what we know and what we're doing and what we wish we were doing that we can't in this space, what we know that's out there in the literature and the best practices and visiting other schools and knowing how to best serve kids. And I think the point you're really making, what do we need to do between, in this example anyway, between now and the opening of a new school, so we're going to use it the way that it's designed to be used. And that's special education, that's the flexible classroom space. What does teaching and learning look like in those environments? So the visioning work here in partnership with our strategic plan, which has a lot of components to that vision as well, marrying that all together. And I think the really exciting part for Justin and I and his building is that we get this really concrete anchor to work toward because we're really defining it so clearly. We're working on the definition district-wide, but it's getting really clarified here because the space needs to fit that. So it is a multifaceted plan. We do need to reach out. We count on our administrators and our connections throughout the pedagogy world to be sure we know what best practices. That's on us to be sure we're finding that out in partnership with those we're working with. So I have to say, in sitting with them today, isolating the staff into a place where they say, what would you do if you could? For example, our BCBA, which is our behavior support person to some of these very specialized programs, she is so limited in this building as to how she can actually support kids. Her wish list went everywhere from designated spaces for sensory work, all the way up to just sound and acoustics and lighting. Like the vision was starting to form because we were all slowing down and starting to say, boy, outside of the confines of what we have, we've got some expertise to start within the room. So it's just going to continue to, continue to move forward from all sorts of different directions. And it's going to be purposeful, and it's going to be a plan that says this is where we are, this is where we want to be once that's defined. So it's actually a really exciting. This is a way to do the teaching and learning we wish we were doing now. So it's going to be that vehicle.
Maybe from the back.
Hi, I apologize if these were covered earlier. I came a little late, so you can just dismiss it if it was. But 3 quick questions. One is, during the construction period, is there going to be any impact on students at the middle school during that time? What are the kind of provisions to ensure minimal disruption? The second is there a plan for the Peabody building once, or the campus, once the project is complete? And the third is, are there student voices involved in the process? I mean, I know Justin started up the student council. Is there a chance for them to weigh in and have some opportunity to direct?
Yep. So I'm going to skip around a little bit and say Phil loves interviewing students. And so we definitely will be engaging students right away. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to pull students in, and we're always open to having them join in on the conversation. We learn amazing things.
And in addition to having current middle school students, we're talking about reaching out to 9th and 10th graders who've been through the process and have matriculated on, and really engage them on looking back and how what they would have liked to have seen now that they're a couple of years older. So that's also in the planning process.
And then as far as Peabody, maybe?
Yeah, the Peabody, the expectation is that Peabody will be surplus back to the town of Concord, and then the select board and others at the town level will decide what its use will be. And then in terms of disruption,
we're going to limit it as much as possible. We were talking about the current plan is to do new construction adjacent to the school. So naturally, you are adjacent to a construction site, but a lot of times we actually find ways, especially starting at middle school, to even involve the students in learning opportunities during the construction phase. So
I would say, having lived renovation and new construction, renovation is far more disruptive to the daily lives of the kids. New construction is going on outside, and that has its disruptions, but the inner workings of the schools will stay essentially normal.
And what is the timeline for the construction, assuming that the town approves the final design?
Until we have the project really defined and the procurement method of how we're going to perform that construction, it's not solid yet, but the goal is fall 2023 opening.
At least that's where it looks, where it's going. I still feel like I have to put a little disclaimer on that.
Can you speak up a little more, Kristen, so people can't hear?
Sure.
Thanks.
I'll repeat that. So the goal is a fall 2023 opening, and then the projected disclaimer is we're not 100% sure of that until we define the project in its entirety. Blue sweatshirt?
Yeah, as far as once you guys have a good grasp on the site, you guys typically, I don't know that much about school design, do you apply like a number of templates that you bring from your experience, or do you build it from sort of bottoms up?
Bottom up, site responsive. Sometimes we will bring in some concepts from other schools just as inspiration to talk about spaces, but our designs are 100% site responsive. So, let's see, someone in the far back.
I live very close to Sanborn, and I'm just curious as to when construction starts to, is there consideration outside of for parking and traffic flow, and mainly for student safety? Because right now it's dark very dark in the parking lot. There's not a lot of light. It's been an issue just even in general, being in this location. I want to think outside of the building too for safety reasons, because we're taking 2 buildings and putting them into one, and the traffic pattern is really going to change in our parking lot. And what is that? I mean, there's my question. I mean, I live really close to here, and I may not have kids that will be able to be a part of the new building, but I will be passing this building a lot.
So we, as a design team and your school building committee and school department, take safety extremely seriously. And once we are far enough along with the plans to define those kind of requirements, there will be a lot of safety precautions taken. Also, in terms of traffic, one of the existing conditions surveys is traffic, and we involve the traffic engineers also in reviewing the temporary construction plan and the final and the current to make sure that we also have a good plan for how to manage traffic during all phases of the project.
Ultimately, it's going to be a lot better. I almost wonder, having lived a building project and we were bringing in temporary lighting and we changed the traffic plan multiple times, even the temporary got a little better. So I think because it's going to get the attention it's needed, we're going to see some gains even if it's busy and in the middle of construction. So
quite an asset that your superintendent has lived through some recent projects herself. So we'll go maybe turquoise. We have 2 in order. So
So my question kind of connects both the building and planning phase with the educational programming. I'm in the STEM education field, and I know that a number of the middle school science standards touch on energy, sustainability, and I was just wondering if thoughts being given to making some of that transparent, both for the current students you mentioned with the construction project, and for future students of what was done to make the building as it is.
absolutely, and Phil can weigh in. And I'm going to give you an example that already happened last week.
So we met with the librarians today. Talked about makerspace. Talked about how that finds itself into the educational process. The MSBA guidelines, for example, which we're not following rigidly, but certainly using as a matrix, has in the last 18 months came out with a whole study on science, technology, and engineering, STE, and makerspaces, and specific actual requirements for their projects, and they're very good guidelines that we're going to bring forward here. So. Yes, very much part of the programming process.
No, go ahead.
Thanks.
I just want to add to that, the connection to sustainability. There will be an eco charrette as part of the process, and we usually include the community, and invite the students. We actually really like it when the students are participating in eco charrette, and so they'll be involved through the design process. But one thing I want to make clear is that it doesn't stop there. There will be features in the building that are going to bring longevity of environmental stewardship being integrated within the educational curricula. There will be outdoor classrooms as well, so there's connection with the site, just as a physical amenity that will kind of indirectly, sort of integrate that as well.
So this is such a good example, I have to give it. Last week I was invited to a 7th grade energy fair here, Justin and I, because the science teacher had the kids divide up types of energy sources, research it, and build projects. Really engaging projects with moving parts, windmills that move and turbines that move, and then they were learning from each other's projects, aggregating all of that, and then they had to give a recommendation on their choice of energy source. And before I left the room, I said, whatever you gather, I'm sending to the building committee, and indeed I did. And I think the more we see just those opportunities as they already sit there in front of us, the more we're going to engage the kids.
Can I make sorry, related to this, I otherwise didn't interrupt. Do you guys ever work with EcoRise? Do you know? Not aware of it? They are a program, you're nodding your head, they develop and support curriculum for sustainable curriculum, and they support student projects and grants. And it might be worthwhile for Justin and his educators to engage them, have some of the students write, a proposal to do a sustainability project related to this, and then have it be part of their curriculum. So I can connect you with them where we use them, and it's a great resource, and they actually work with the educators and develop curriculum around it, both STEM, sustainability. So.
And one last thing, because it's really important that once I think the students will really be the stewards of basically overseeing occupant behavior.
Indeed, they are, aren't they?
And keeping everybody in line, and we'll have some, some tools, and that goes beyond. Yes, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yes. So that's another component, and it'd be great to, sort of integrate that with the curriculum.
So when I made an earlier comment and referred to the high school project, you sort of said you weren't familiar with it. I'm going to make a recommendation as a previous board member in town who's been to town meetings several times. Become familiar with the pitfalls that got people upset on the high school, because I think there's a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths in town of some things that happened through the high school. And from a design standpoint, there's a few miserable failures there, and one of them is security. And that's something that no one's really been talking about in town, and it's something that the basic partie of the high school building is just an absolute abysmal security failure. And so there's some things like that I think could be really good lessons learned from the high school, and it would make sense to sort of become a little bit familiar with what happened in the process of it going to town meeting as well. Because when you come to town meeting, everyone who's there is going to remember, as you've heard from people live here for a long time, and you're going to get, people are going to associate this project with what happened on high school, and so.
Yeah, there's plenty of us around them that know the stories too, firsthand. So you're right, we need to be very, very cautious and make sure we're learning from those. Every building project will have its ups and downs, I'll just say that out loud. So hopefully we learn from those and we get ahead of them. I think we're already doing that. And it's a great facility up there. You always step back, having opened in other buildings, as Kristen said, you always step back and go, oh, we could have, we wish we had, but we couldn't afford it. So we always have to brace for that. Our goal here is to be really open about when those choices come up, so everyone's aware and that we don't have any surprises.
And we definitely have come across some documents that talk about lessons learned on the high school and everything, but definitely that first-hand feedback on what happened is more helpful than anything. And we did have some of our design team walk through the high school with Lori to talk about it as well recently. So we'll definitely become very familiar and engage security professionals. We have them on our team, and we'll be.
Do you have a security consultant on this?
Yes, yep, we do. Both
we have already started talking about it.
And our last meeting today was included 2 SROs, school resource officers who are patrolmen, Concord patrolmen, and so we've all, on day 1 of programming, we've engaged them. We're going to engage both police and fire through the course of the program, and the school safety and security is something that's very much a part of our mindset, and a philosophy that I've been talking to the teachers about is that the safety and security has to be there, but it also has to be invisible to the students. And so how do we create very secure facilities that don't make it look prison-like? And so that's very much on our radar. I've been involved personally both at the national and international level, creating symposia on school safety and security over the last couple of years. So it's something that's very much a part of my background as well. And so that, working with our security consultants, I think really have the opportunity to create secure facilities that are really wonderful education facilities without the baggage of safety and security.
Thank you. My name is Carol, and I'm the co-president of the CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, so I'm going to back up a little bit. First off, I really want to thank you for holding this parent forum, parent and community forum, I should say. I think it's wonderful to put everybody here together in one room and really talk about what we envision for the school. Am I not talking? What we envision for the school as parents. So just a couple points is Phil, right? Did I get Phil right? Yeah. Yep. So great visiting the teachers. I know we have wonderful teachers. We also have wonderful parents who are very knowledgeable. I want to encourage you to hold parent-specific forums for education, special education, even breaking that down. I think big groups are great, but I think when you can get into the smaller groups that have a really great stakeholderness, that you can get some other really detailed, pointed questions answered and thoughts out there. And the other is, and you may have said it, I may have missed it, but I really would like to see some experts coming in, for example, the Institute for Human-Centered Design or someone from the autism community who can really come in and talk to the building committee and talk to you about what they see and maybe what they've been through, maybe self-advocates. We also have a town commission on disability. We need to connect with them early on in the procedure. So I added in CPAC and that parent kind of forum thing. So just want to really, does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say I'll be your community advocate on this, just so you know. I sit on the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, so I am intimately involved with a lot of architectural access throughout the state, but also in schools, and pushing universal design and pushing spaces that are unique to students who, whether they're on the spectrum or have sensory issues or just different ways of learning. I will very much be an advocate for those students.
So I think adding on again, it might be nice to have those smaller, where they're advertised as a parent forum focused on sustainability, focused on education, focused on safety. I know it's a lot of time, but I think with our community and the time we have, I think you really get some really deep conversations. Thank you.
Back corner.
Shifting gears a little, what's the lifespan and durability of the school, and follow that up? What's your formal methodology to figure out how this investment the town's making is going to last?
Well, so we do some a lot of life cycle cost analysis when we're choosing all of the systems and reviewing all of the systems. We, just from experience, know what materials hold up well and which don't, and how to protect your walls. My favorite thing of when I came on board to SMMA and learned about how they made choices on school design was thinking about the tile height in the corridors. You know, at the high school level, you might need tile up to here to protect your walls. At the elementary school, maybe you stop a little short of that. And just that kind of thoughtfulness can add a lot of years to your building and lower your maintenance cost. And then I don't know if Martine, if you want to add anything to.
Yes. Life cycle's huge part, obviously, of the energy, both from a systems perspective and building components and structure. If you look at this building, if you look at, you made a comment about MSBA's log, 150 to 100. You know, a lot of our projects right now are in the 40 to 50 range. The life cycle that we look at is 50 years. So we really look for durability. Now that said, you know, there are things over the 50 years that get replaced, you know, new technology. So there's also, I think, an important aspect that we need to consider is making as much as possible, because we don't know what the future technology will be in 10 years. But as much as possible, make the building ready for upgrades in 15, 20, 25 years. But the components that are the ones that we will likely not upgrade, for example, your walls, your exterior walls, those are the ones where we want to invest and make durable for a long time. We also do life cycle cost assessment, for example, for some of the finishes, flooring. You know, there are products that are less expensive first cost, you know, to buy, but then they, over the time, they cost more to maintain. So we do look at that. So that's another component. I don't know if we've answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is about staffing, and I guess it's broad, but just thinking about staffing from a 2-building model to a 1-building model, staffing as you have new classroom spaces, and so to professional development opportunities, and then even just when it goes to town meeting and you're thinking about asking for money to build versus asking for money to build, to train and hire. Could you talk a little bit about staffing thinking and sort of where the staff is in terms of their feeling about the project?
There's an awful lot of energy and enthusiasm in this building today. They're very, very excited. They're very excited about what the opportunities are. And what I felt in the room was this really openness, and this tends to go with the building project. The energy around the building project really opens people up to what could I do differently. So we absolutely were hearing that all day. Some visions already kind of formed and some in their fledgling, and that's what we're going to work on is we were department by department today, so obviously we want to build a cohesive vision too. I'm going to try to get a few of your questions through there. The staffing piece, we have already identified, I think conservatively, between operating costs of other kinds and staffing consolidations, $500,000 worth of operating costs by getting under one roof. That said, when I sit with the nurses, Justin and I sit with the nurses this afternoon, and we've got 2 nurses in one building coming, we can't answer them exactly what that plan's going to be. Or in some of the other places we have redundancies. So that's going to be the work we have to do over the coming time, and that's where my job parallels over to the Concord School Committee and talking on the operating budget, so to go into that gear. You know, the operating budgets, we work closely with the Finance Committee, and I see a number of them here tonight, to come up with operating budgets that we feel meet the school's needs and fit the town's fiscal affordability. We've been getting tighter and tighter on that the last couple of years. This project is going to be another way we need to do that. We start our budgets from 0 every year and build up, and certainly the budget that comes into play when we're going to open these schools have to factor in all the projections for what we're going to do for staffing and how. So you put that next to the warrants for a full building project, that is obviously going to need its own standalone, very well-informed discussion with all of the input of all of these folks, paralleling and bouncing back all of the feedback they've heard from all of you, and hopefully bringing a deliverable design that meets the hopes and expectations of a community that would consider funding it. So similar processes, different in scale and scope and regularity. The annual budgets we do every year and are kind of midpoint in now. And then the capitals stuff, small things we do maybe annually, but big projects like this are full-blown information sessions, sometimes all to themselves. So, did I hit everything? Did I miss anything? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't want to steal the floor. One question is, have people talked about an opportunity for increased diversity in terms of staff being hired?
Oh, we talk about it all the time. We're happy to have an offline conversation with you about that. It's in our strategic plan and one of our objectives.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm assuming that cooling is part of the integral design.
That's what the teachers asked me today.
I wanted to ask Lori about whether there's plans to use the school building outside of the regular
Great question.
school.
I'm glad you mentioned that because we haven't talked much on that tonight. I think the building committee, and anybody who here wants to jump in on this, please. We certainly are considering what the potential uses are of the school for the community at large. We were very clear, I think, on boarding SMMA that was going to be an expectation of the project. The question is, what does that mean right now? We've heard from the youth groups they'd like a full-size gymnasium. MSBA rules, which we keep referencing tonight, doesn't usually allow for that in a middle school that they would fund. We're hearing requests for full-size auditorium so we can move town meeting over here and get out of the high school gym. But I think that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of what the more day-to-day functionality would be. Today we were looking at some pictures and brainstorming, could that be a community room off of the cafeteria? So there's going to be a lot of options, and we're going to have to decide which ones we want to go with. So that would be feedback I think the building committee needs to hear, is what your hopes might be for the building to be used by the community, but we definitely see that as a vision.
Or even by the educational community in the summer.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
And just as a side point, we're always happy to listen. I met with the town moderator without any, just listening as far as, opportunities for potential moving town meeting, just understanding what the impact is and what the issues are. So, if any of that can be woven into this design, I think there'd be, some support in town. But if anyone wants to, come to our meetings or share ideas, we're always listening.
And I'll just add, Heather and I are the communications committee, and this in particular is going to be really important for us to hear from the community how important it is to our community to have this new building, this opportunity available for the community, and in what way. Because that will translate into asking for more money possibly from the community. So if people are talking about it at barbecues and at play dates, and it would be good to get that back to the committee and to come to the meetings, and especially come to town to talk about it.
Just a couple of words. I just want to say a couple of things. Your questions are great, okay? And the sort of the good part is we haven't heard a lot in many respects that we haven't already talked about, okay? Not that we have all the problems solved, but the things that you bring up, I want to assure you that the things that you have brought up are being discussed on a regular basis across the broad spectrum of the committee, okay? In terms of commitment. One of the things I would say is, and I think a lot of people here know this, is these buildings have gotten extraordinarily expensive, okay? There's a good chance this building that we're going to build could be equal to or greater in cost than the high school, okay? And that's not just sort of what we're conjuring up. We've been to, I think, 10 or 12 schools. We have a database of all the schools in comparative communities that we cost against our size school and their level of finish, so we kind of know where we are, and it's not just that everybody's doing a bad job. To build a great middle school, costs a certain amount of money, and that the range we have is $80 to $100 million, and it's a challenge. Okay, this is not easy. Okay, you compound that with we have very aggressive goals. Okay, we have aggressive goals in terms of sustainability that we are committed to. Not just in the sense that it's checking off a box. I think we have 3 to 4 superb people in terms of sustainability knowledge that are agreeing in the committees and designing the project. It's not, we need the sustainability people in the finance, we need the sustainability people in the design, we need, specifically focusing on it. So there's a great commitment to that. And not just to get a plaque on the wall or we checked off sustainability, that it really is a fundamental part of the building, okay, of an educational facility that respects and demands sustainability, okay, and it's not just energy usage, it's a whole series of things. I've learned more in the last 3 months about real sustainability than I think I would have ever learned. That's a challenge. We're going to go as far as we possibly can, okay, in the issues. The building's expensive in a case it doesn't have to be more expensive, but we have to monitor the fact that what we're spending because the building is so expensive. Another challenge is this is the last school building of this cycle of buildings that's being built, okay? All of the post-war buildings are now gone, and 3 grade schools have been built, the high school has been built, and this is the last one. There's a challenge there because whatever anybody wants, this is the last chance for a little while. You get this? Okay. So, and that's not to say we're putting the hands out. We kind of understand that, okay? We understand the needs from the town about the auditorium and the thing, and we understand the wide range of athletic activities that occur on the site right now and the need for more in terms of that size gym. We've got to understand what that means in terms of all of the costs and the size of the building. So it's a challenge, okay? And we also, having said that, the number one goal is to have a very focused, far-reaching educational vision and design that incorporates new concepts of education. And I am convinced, having both seen some of the materials that are coming out of the educational talk and in some ways more importantly, having visited personally 10 schools that have made significant revisions in the way buildings are structured in order to support new educational theory, that it's a very exciting thing. Okay, so we're doing that too. So there's a lot on the table, and we're not going to say that we're going to sacrifice this goal for that goal. We want to push on every one of these things and try to do amazing things in sustainability, in supporting the town, and centrally to support a new vision of education that's really going to take the kids. You'd have to be there. We've seen some schools that we really love, and when you see the school actually physically supporting in a facility those concepts that we talk about in terms of team teaching, in terms of inclusion, in terms of project-based learning, it's extraordinarily exciting. So, we're excited about it, but I just wanted to emphasize that it is a significant challenge.
Can you give some examples of those educational spaces that are so wonderful? I mean, the last time I was in school was many, many years ago, and I'd like to know, spaces for a student to go and have a quiet space within the classrooms the teacher gets to monitor, or flexible spaces. Because
who wants to grab that?
These concepts that.
Sure, good question, Brian.
Yeah, there's a lot of materials being shared in these meetings and community meetings and everything upcoming. So there will be more images shared at that time. There's going to be, I'm sure, a lot of this material made available on the website, but for firsthand
yeah, we're trying to give you a big picture view of it, and I think that as you see designs and we give you some examples visually, it'll clarify. But really the goal here is that we build teams in the middle school. We call them teams now, but it's hard to be a team when you're spread out the whole length of the school. By team, we really mean...
My kids know that.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody with kids in the school, they know that. It's a good, we've timed it, Mr. Cameron, what, 4+ minute walk from the mods to the other end. You put all your core content teachers in one section of the building. Usually it's a portion of one of the floors or something like that. And the kids then, that's their hub all day long. And what we're really impressed by, and I've seen out in the other schools and in the examples they've brought us, that hub becomes the pod that becomes really, really flexible. Hallways tend to not exist the way they did before, that central point. What were we calling it today, Phil? The common? The neighborhood?
Neighborhood or team common.
The neighborhood or team common, where that space outside of those classrooms is built for small group work, for presentations, for individual little cubby kind of work, really, really flexibly. And then between and within classrooms, you've got doors that are accordion style, and we are talking lots of glass, but secure. So there's tons of visibility everywhere. Kids are supervised all the time, and it just creates this big, bright, engaging environment. A lot of accordion doors, a lot of ability to move and flex the space, so that maybe you're in a regular sized classroom, but maybe you want to double up English and what we heard today from the teachers. English and social studies are often teaching the same topics from different directions, and wouldn't it be great if their classrooms could be next to each other and they slide the glass back and they've got a double-sized classrooms. So does that help? It's like a high level, but it really...
Visuals will really help.
Absolutely, and I think part of what I want to stress about maybe your frustration for not having more information That was actually the point, was to hear from you, to feed us what you're looking for, so that as we build things, we can bring that to you. So we have another forum scheduled for February 27th, Thursday, because at that point they'll have spent time with all of us, heard from all of you, started to aggregate that, and we'll have themes and pieces to work with. We can certainly bring some visuals to that.
And as we meet with the educators and staff, we have slides that we are bringing up on the screen. So first we start with the dialogue of listening, and then as they bring up issues, we're able to bring up images of contemporary environments or diagrams that not only meet but in many cases exceed the aspirations that they've just expressed in a specific area. So that's been a very effective two-way discussion with the teachers and staff.
So we hear the feedback, we'll bring some visuals at the end of February.
I think the other thing is when we've gone to visit schools and you see the children in the schools, I'm around 3, 4, and 5-year-olds all day, and we have learning centers and we have project centers and we have open spaces, and they collaborate and they commingle and their social emotional learning is happening at the same time. Well, I can begin to see that in these middle schools. And having lived through middle school with myself and my own children, the sense of it, the feel of it is very different and very hopeful. So
can I just add that education is changing and how it's being delivered is changing from even when I went to school, when a lot of us went to school. The teachers aren't lecturing anymore, they're facilitators. They're out there helping students move in a direction, and it may be different from one student to another. And what that means is you have multiple teaching services, you have multiple places in the building that students learn. They're not just learning in the classrooms, as Lori said, they're learning in the corridors, they're learning in the cafeteria, they're learning in the media center. Maybe they're working on a project for science, but they're using their math skills to write the, and English skills to write the report, and they're calling on different different teachers and curriculum to feed into a project. It's really different, and I described this recently to just a couple in town whose daughter had gone to Alcott when it was built, and I reminded them that it was 15 years old, and they laughed and they said, oh my God, you're right, and they forgot because it feels so new to them, and they said, well, what's different? I said, it's functioning how it was designed, but it's a 15-year-old building and education has changed. And so when I had this, it was probably only about an hour conversation with them. At the end, they were like, oh my God, we had no idea that education is so different now. And when you don't live it and breathe it and see it, it's hard to imagine how it's a school, right? Like there's classrooms. It's really different. And until you go and tour a modern school and understand how it is differently, to understand the architecture supporting the education, it may be harder to wrap your arms around. So if you ever have a chance to look at a new school, a new modern middle school in particular, it's really eye-opening and exciting.
We're jumping in, sorry, can I just jump in quickly too and then we'll stop. Only that everybody's asking great questions and very politely asking questions, and some of them have been about where can we give more input, and I would just like to add in, that's what we're here for now. So feel free to be less polite and tell us, this is what we want to see. You don't have to just ask polite questions tonight. Just open the floodgate. So really, tell us what you want to see in a middle school. That's what we want to hear tonight.
I'm curious to hear which schools you visited and which towns that have really inspired you and that you walked away with really wonderful feelings.
Yeah, so there's, I'm sorry, look, I'm so excited to just answer it. I'm going to ask you. Two have really inspired us. Oh, they all inspired us, but two really stood out. The Gates Middle School in Situate. Actually, the commissioner was just there highlighting their work. And they've been open. This is the test of time for me. They went under a really strong project-based learning model. There's all different ways you can come out how to get to this teaching. That was their direction. They've had leadership changes twice over now, both at the central office and the principalship, and we still walked through a building that's been open since 2014. It's been a good 5-ish years, and actively it's entrenched. The other is Hanscom, which SMMA designed. We were just there most recently and really looked at that same mindset and same approach with a little different flair to it. That principal and that staff showed us exactly the same energy and enthusiasm, and said teaching and learning had changed dramatically. They had that little wrinkle of having the Department of Defense tell them all what to do, which actually proven to hold itself as a really great model. So a lot of good opportunities there. For me personally, those are the two that stood out.
I think Beverly, I think, helped some of us as well.
Sure.
With some
Sure.
ideas.
Beverly Middle School.
I'm curious about the, I haven't been in a middle school in quite a while, but I'm curious about the integration of health and wellness and food and fitness, and whether that's starting to find its way into the pedagogy versus just being, you go off to the cafeteria or you go off the gym.
Great question. We had great conversations today with both our health teachers and then our brand new food service manager and his staff over here. Very visionary, very much wanting to be sure they're part of the educational program for kids. And that's not just going to happen here, that's happening everywhere. Those are major initiatives for us. The food piece is a little newer because Bryce, our director, just got here in July. But we are actively re-engaging all of that with the curriculum and the wellness piece and talking with kids about what those things mean and making it a nice cyclical piece so that we build that so it's part of the core of what we do here. I think Bryce said it so beautifully, Phil. What did he say? He said, cafeteria is a place where you're socializing and getting emotional energy from each other while you happen to eat some of the time. And I'm like, oh.
Will all the food be prepared in the cafeteria?
Yeah, that was a vision that came up today. The building committee hasn't even heard some of his visions there, but he is hoping, hello, Thursday morning, he is hoping to bring all food preparation here and then spoke it out to the elementaries from here. We haven't talked about that. The design team just heard it today. Tim's shaking his head going, we can't afford it. So the wish list is big. The wish list is big.
Also fitness.
And fitness for life, sure. We talked a lot about that today, and not just full-size gymnasiums, but opportunities otherwise. All the schools we visited have a secondary physical space, whether it is a actual equipment room and you're really in there doing cardio stuff, or is it more flexible and there's some yoga space. So I think there's a whole new mindset that's going to happen here. We've watched that happen even in our own high school. So good question.
I thought Martin might have it.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, just to add in terms of sustainability, this is part of sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are some concepts within both LEAD and WELL where we look at design for active occupants and specific features of the physical building can be enhanced to have kids, for example, walk up instead of taking the elevator, there's an elevator, that type of thing, the outdoors activities and that type of thing. So that'll be part of the conversation.
Hi, I attend a lot of your meetings, and you probably are getting to know my face. And I know a lot of people can't make the meetings, but I still really crave more information. I would really encourage you to have more of these community discussions and forums. As you can see, everyone in here wants to know more about their particular interests. I, of course, am really excited about the sustainability aspect and the net zero. I'm really excited to see a combination of education and sustainability to tie in with the STEM education, how the building can be used to supplement STEM education. The solar panels can be used to, they can monitor it and all that goodness. I actually was asked, I was texted by someone to ask a question because they are at a bike committee meeting right now at the same time. They want to know if you're looking into incorporating in the bike trail so that kids can bike to the middle school.
Yeah, so I think it's a conversation that we'll definitely be having with design site, the school department, how that might tie in and to what extent will definitely be on the table for conversation. Mike?
Thanks. Yeah, so I went to a new high school in the 80s, which was like this new open concept classroom. It was a terrible idea. The kids got distracted. I can imagine glass walls between classrooms is like one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. You know, the common area I like, the commons where people can do certain things and, you know, go off their little space and share is wonderful, but kids these days are too stimulated. The high school has way too many screens. I'm sorry if I'm getting very emotional about this, but I just feel really strongly like less tech is better. You know, most of the world does not have the amount of technology that we have. In my husband's office, they spent $5,000 to get this like high-tech video conferencing thing, and he works at a satellite office at the headquarters are in Denver. They spent like $5,000 to $10,000, had all these tech people, and oh, we got this wonderful TV, you can, you know, communicate. They never used it. They used it once and they ripped it out, so this was a waste of, you know, $5,000. It was not used. So I would like to see less technology, more sustainability. Learning can be done without all the bells and whistles, and I've learned recently that the tech comes with a power cost. You know, everyone has their devices plugged in and running all the time. That sucks power. So I just want to say I would prefer less tech than more. We haven't talked a lot about tech, but I just wanted to say that. You know, Heather, thank you for saying we can say what our vision is. Mine would be for as little tech as possible to get the kids like ready for the modern world. At home, they do enough tech. Like, I would like the schools to focus on teaching and not screens.
So I think I might have two different responses to that. Phil on open classrooms, and then maybe an educator on the technology piece.
I got that.
Thank you. You want to start off?
No, Phil, if you want to talk about the open classroom.
Yeah, please first. And the transparency and distraction.
Right, and so what we're talking about with transparency and neighborhood and teen commons and small group rooms and medium-sized group rooms and activities filtering out beyond the classroom are ideas that we've been developing and implementing in many schools. And there's, to some people, there's an appearance that has similarities to the open plan classrooms of the late 60s and early 70s. But having been part of the design of some of those schools way back when, I can tell you that we didn't have the tools that we do today that have the ability to isolate both visually and acoustically from space. The idea that mechanical units used to hang in exposed and make lots of noise, our mechanical systems today are virtually silent. The idea of a classroom can open into another classroom or open into a learning commons is really a matter of choice on the part of the teacher. We're not saying there are operable walls, so open them all up and use it. What we're saying is that we're creating opportunities for differentiation and personalization in learning. So it's really about a choice. It's empowering students, providing student agency, and what was mentioned before of having opportunities for peer-to-peer learning within a classroom, and for that to go beyond the classroom itself. The entire school environment and campus are part of teaching and learning spaces. So although, and you'll see diagrams in the future, although there are operable walls it's a far cry from the open plan schools of 50 years ago, and it's really about providing teachers and students with new and different types of opportunities, with the ability to control those environments, with the ability to control acoustics and vary lighting and provide opportunity for light and views from all of the teaching spaces. So that's part of it.
Just one quick feedback on the technology piece, and this isn't just to this building project that this answer fits. We believe really strongly that technology needs to be a balance, and that if it needs to be it's an incredibly powerful educational tool. If it's not being used for that purpose, that's when it needs to get put away. I talk about it no more with anyone else than Mr. Cameron, because he feels so passionately that this age group needs to get this figured out, and the adults need to be engaged and active in that and not leave them to their own devices, literally, and be part of that discussion with them, and sometimes control it, which means sometimes we are telling them they're put away and they're not being used. So balance is the answer to that. It's a work in progress. I think it's a never-ending work in progress, to be honest, both for kids, for educators, for us as adults, but it's one high on our radar for sure.
I have a question that relates to a kitchen, as I'm thinking about it.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Is there room in the project for a garden so that students can have a farm to table, or garden to table concept, which will be also project grants, science, other projects that we incorporated?
Yes, so our landscape architect will definitely be involved in part of that conversation about how to use the green space and gardening and plants in general.
But we haven't met with special educators yet, and we've already been talking about the opportunity for gardens in the school. So I think that when we begin speaking with special education, that's going to amplify.
Can you clarify
yes,
what you mean by special education and gardening?
I'm sorry?
Can you clarify what you mean by special education and gardening? Do you mean special, I'm confused, you mean it's something special for everyone, or are you talking about special education?
No, no, just the tactile opportunities within special education, and very often there is we see a request within different groups in special education to provide opportunities for that kind of activity and relief as part of their activities. So it's not unusual to be part of various special education programs, but also we'll be talking to science about that, and we'll talk to the food service people about it. So.
Yeah, I think that one touches really all disciplines. It's a great outdoor learning opportunity for the whole cross-section, and we do get our landscape architect involved, your food service person, your science. That one really is an all-encompassing topic, and it's definitely implemented a lot already in other buildings that we've been part of designing, and so no doubt it'll find its way in here. In the back.
I keep hearing a question asked and not really a clear answer, and I just wanted to rephrase the question. I think they're looking for consultants coming in who can look at this building to make sure that it's up to code for American disabilities, a consultant. So if I had to throw it out there, put that in your list, Heather. I think acoustically, the buildings, the new buildings that are being built with a lot of glass, acoustically, this can be a problem for two types of kids, one with sensory, some with attention, and some visually. So I think that if we have some consultants come in to look at your plan, knowing that the vision is of the future with a lot of these glass, high ceilings, things that are hidden, yes, they're nice and quiet, but then you don't have the ability to drown out sound of footsteps and things like that. If you could just throw that into your planning, I think that getting some of that would be some answers that we're able to make sure that the building is going to serve all. And then the other piece that I really would love to hear more information on, because if this does serve the community as a whole down the road, this building, this is going to be a massive building that needs a massive parking lot and a really good traffic flow, because I do live close to here, and
I think there are surrounding neighbors that would love to look at that plan and make sure that this is safe children crossing the street to get to their parents' car, because right now it is not. So those are two things that I would love to get more information in a future meeting. Thank you.
What's the formal methodology of the committee and the spur to decide the trade-offs, right, costs? Because I think these input meetings are really good. Concord's a very engaged town. You know, it was suggested that there's a lot of different dual use for the community. Is that going to add cost? You know, how are you going to make the decision what to do, not to do, and how is that going to be communicated to the town?
I might refer to this committee.
You're welcome to put it too on that.
First you got to collect the information about what people want, right? And thoughtfully what they want. And sometimes people have an idea and it's not, you know, it may already exist or not, but you have those conversations so you get a list of things that the community might see as advantageous in the building or the site. And then I think you have to engage with the other town officials. You have to talk to the finance committee, you have to talk to the town manager, you have to talk to the selectmen about the prioritization of those things with good information about what they might incrementally cost. And then, because you really have to, this whole project is going to have buy-in from not only the parents, but a wide spectrum of the entire Concord community, who have traditionally been extraordinarily supportive of education, but it is an expensive building. And so the trade-offs, I think you have to identify, to kind of summarize, you have to identify what things people want, you have to run those by the other relevant town committees, and then have that discussion with selectmen and finance committee are these things that we want to collectively support as part of this site. And my guess is there'll be affirmation of that, and I think if you get the right group of leaders involved, then you'll get good town support.
Will the firms and companies that the town engages with, will they give you a range of cost options? So it's not a black or white, you know, or zero-sum game?
Yes, we're committed to providing information on every decision aspect, square footage, cost, trade-offs throughout the process, so that all the information is available, so that those meetings can be effective and those conversations effective.
I always talk about it. You want to be intentional. You don't want to wind up at the end, well, we did this and we thought that's what everybody wanted, right? You want to have enough information about what people want, and then to have a process that's transparent and very specific as to when decisions are going to be made, so people can enter in and know what the dilemmas are. You know, probably a series of meetings. One meeting earlier on, people have to understand what the dilemmas are you're facing. Okay, so they can think about it, and then there's a time where you make decisions and trade-offs based on input.
Thank you.
I have a few items for your list, Heather.
All right.
I would love to see the special ed vans not drop off at the side of the building, but
sorry, say it again.
I would love to see the special ed vans not drop off at the side of the building, but allow them to come in with their peers. I would love to see the special education classrooms not being separate from the rest of the classrooms, like in the high school. And I would, most importantly, love to see an inclusion subcommittee with experts brought in from the outside, as is being done with security and with sustainability.
All on my list. Thank you.
Are you saying that all the special ed is in one place at the high school?
They're all in one. The Pathways program and all those programs are in a hallway down by guidance, past guidance. They're by themselves, basically. They're not with the rest of the population.
Because typical to the process is that this goes through the DESE for approval and distribution, and
my understanding, and I could be wrong, maybe Lori can speak to this, is that we have gotten, I'm going to say, a ding because they are separate from.
So they're not all separate. There's a little hallway there, and I think, and I can't answer to the design of the building, I wasn't here for that, but I think because of the type of program that's there, they needed a lot of room to push it out. Up in the other, all throughout the building, there are a lot of different programs. That one program happens to be there, and I think partly because they needed so much room.
Is it like a life skills or like a?
It's a life.
I mean, that's where I was
I'm still hoping that was a poor place to put it.
And we met with the transportation people today, and we talked about the yellow buses and the special education vans, and very specifically about that, so that we've already started that discussion.
I think to add on to that is we need to make sure that every single person, staff, student, teacher, whatever I say, can all enter through the same door together. And you know, the old days when accessibility was starting to come about, where you had to go down the walkway around the bushes and through the back door to get in. I think it really just has to, if you just keep that frame line, all want to walk through the same building.
I'm going to take Heather's green light and pound two issues. So one is, as a dad that's trying to set the record for most teams coached in town, I'm regularly embarrassed by our outdoor and indoor athletic facilities compared to surrounding communities in the greater Metro West. And it's not just athletic facilities. The point was brought up earlier, and I wanted to bring it up. But I really think that, whether intentional or not, our great elementary schools are largely taken offline nights, weekends, summers, and are inaccessible. And that means that the high school is doing the heavy lifting of being the communal space for Concord. And so I think that intentionally this should be designed with the mindset that we want this space to be used both for students and for the broader community on nights, weekends, summers, and what those indoor and outdoor spaces would look like. Not just athletic, arts, performance, etc. So that's just one topic to echo a couple of the threads made earlier. The second topic, I've totally forgotten.
Just a plug for on how you can continue to send ideas. The Concord Middle School Building Project has its own page on the school district webpage and also on the town webpage. There is an email the committee link right there. People are finding it. We're getting a couple of days lately. And it's been really great feedback. So spread the word, use that if you think things after you've left. It's a great, efficient way for you to get things right to us, you know, in a convenient time frame. You remembered.
I did remember, sorry. The second point is on the topic of sustainability and robustness and this lasting for a long time, our investment. I'm just being more punctuated because of Heather's green light. I don't know who decided on the furnishings and the equipment for the high school. I think that person or committee might not have known many teenagers. I mean, the furniture, especially like in the dining area and that kind of stuff, you know, it started looking pretty ragged in the first year. So, you know,
those orange chairs, yeah, they're on my list.
As part of
they're not holding up.
As part of this build out, I think if we could, you know, again, there's been discussion of low hanging fruit and trade-offs, but you know, I'd hate to see us outfit this thing with kind of run-of-the-mill stuff that's going to be a shorter lifespan than the average tenure of the students.
Yeah, great.
Heather, are you ready to take more?
I'm ready. So are they. There's
a lot of people writing up here. I don't want you to think they weren't writing.
We're loving the feedback.
I want the building to be net zero and I want that to be a committed, passionate, take no prisoner goal, because if you make your goal to do your best, you're going to do less. I want the goal to be net zero. I want adequate gym and activity space, in part because we're a town that does a lot of activities, and in part because our activities seem to be an essential part of our children's, our students' mental health in the town. And we have a mental health what? Crisis, right? So please make sure we have adequate facilities so that these kids can practice their winter sports and be in bed before 10 o'clock. not practicing till all hours of the night because they're trying to fit through a time funnel. So that's another thing I want. I want an inclusion specialist on the committee, just like someone said earlier, just like we have for sustainability and just like we have for these other specialists. Because I want a school that's not for 75% of the kids. I want a school that's for 100% of our kids. And I don't remember my last one, but I'll come back to you. Thank you.
You can't top that.
Oh, one more, okay.
I was just going to add to the net zero. In the process of working toward that, I'd also like us to be really mindful of the health inside the building and the air quality and the water and the. I read a little bit of SMA and how much attention you pay to those kinds of issues, VOCs, and everything that could affect the health and well-being of our students inside the building is just as important.
I would love when we demolish buildings that there's an opportunity to recycle materials, if not within our own community, then with other communities.
Does that give you time to think of your final thoughts? I'm wondering.
I exhausted myself.
It sounds like we're about ready to wrap up. Any last questions?
I have a question for the other. Do we know when the next community meeting or approximately so that
Thursday, February 27th, back here, 7 o'clock.
Just, I want everyone to get it on my calendar.
Yep. Sue remembered and then Fatima. So
This is a really good thing. On the next meeting, if it's going to be at Sanborn, my suggestion is that maybe we do it in the cafeteria. This is very back to, like, it's not a very intimate space. We're not really together. And it'd be nice in terms of the design of these open, like not open projects from the 70s, but, that we're a little more together.
Sure, great.
Yeah.
Can I also say it's a little bit hard to hear? I don't know how many people felt that way, but if you only hear half the words, you've only been here for half the session. So it is, acoustically, it's very difficult, and we ought to consider, if we're going to continue to meet it here, we ought to have microphones.
Can I just say one thing? I would like to mention that the League of Women Voters is sponsoring a First Friday Forum, and Lori will be there, and representatives from the Concord Middle School Building Committee will be there. It's February 7th at the West Concord Union Church, right across from Fowler Library. Everyone's invited. We hope 9:30 in the morning, February 7th. And this is sponsored by the League of Women Voters. And we'll be doing a very similar presentation right now, a little different, but it'll be open to questions and we'll have a presentation.
Yeah, I think to that same mindset, if you're here, and a number of you are, because I know what you do here in town, if you'd like to invite some of us out to your groups, we're happy to figure that out with you. And I think to Carol's point, in a little more intimate setting on a particular strand of this. So just let me know and I'll choreograph to see who can come, or if I just come and then come back and liaison back. So that way if you have particular interest, we can come and listen more specifically. All right? All right, thank you all. Thanks for coming out.
So we talked about waters and water space for students and learning, and it just occurred to me, have we also thought about a space for staff during the school day?
Yes.
Have a less stressful day.
We spoke on it today. It's a very good point. It started to give them our vision of what space our staff would have, both more socially and relaxing, but also quality workspace. Thank you. Thank you all.